Okay, if that's not a compelling argument for you to continue your spend in TV, I don't know what is. There was a lot of truth bombs went off during that presentation. And to wrap this all up and to actually understand how you take the science of that research and implement that into your brand spend, please, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the king of research here himself from Thinkbox. He's been mentioned several times across this conference. Let's give a massive round of applause for Matt Hill and his panelists. Come on, let's give him a big round. Come on, Matt. Oh, there he is. Oh, mate.
Hey, on.
Yeah, how's it going?
All good. King of research.
Oh,
bloody hell.
Nice. You're my go-to guy.
That's all right, isn't it?
Slides.
Didn't expect that intro. No, I've got that £5 though. But, superb. Well, good morning, everybody. We have the unenviable task of having to follow Peter Field, which is always a bit of a tough gig. What a presentation that was. Hopefully everyone's been taking pictures and loads of notes to take home, loads of good stuff, loads of gold, as always, from Peter there. We have a fantastic panel. We're going to follow on from there. We're going to continue to talk about effectiveness, and we have the perfect people to talk about how we can get the most out of TV. So I'm going to start off by asking our panel to introduce themselves and most importantly, tell us a little bit about what they do, but what their favourite telly show was this year. So I'm going to start with you, Chris, as you're sitting to my right. So tell us about who you are, what you do, and your favourite show so far this year.
So hi, I'm Chris Love from Virgin Media O2. I look after most of our effectiveness work, so aside from digital attribution and research, so econometrics, experimentation, TV attribution, various bits of reporting. My favourite show this year, I'm a bit of a sucker for MasterChef The Professionals.
Love it. Yeah.
Which is probably a little bit out there, but a couple of guys on my team would have heard me say this yesterday, but particularly early on when they're doing the skills test, it's brutal and it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's often with those reality shows that it's the early on bit is like the best bit, isn't it? And
towards the end they're just really good chefs and it's a bit boring, but at the beginning it's great.
Jackie.
So I used to live in Dalston and I did my mat leave. I walked around Dalston a lot and then I did lockdown one there. So for me it was Top Boy, the final one.
Okay, yeah.
I find that really exciting. I was sad it was the last one. And also there's a person called Jackie who's probably under 40 and there's never anyone called Jackie under 40. So that was good for me.
Yeah. That's a high point. And tell us, and you're Havas, you look after planning?
Yeah, so my role at Havas, I'm head of planning and so I sit right in the middle of everyone. I work closely with activation, with strategy, with data. So busy role right in the centre, but ultimately I'm responsible for the planning product of the agency.
Fantastic. Ben?
Great. Hi, Ben Tatta, Chief Commercial Officer of Operative, which is a global ad tech company. We provide ad management solutions for publishers and media companies. As a media junkie and someone who's worked for a couple of family-owned media companies, I would have to say Succession would have been my top favorite show for this year and the last few years.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Oh,
I was devastated when it ended. It was like I felt like I lost a friend. It's such a good show.
Fortunately, there's enough Alex Roy characters in the media business that we all know that keeps it going.
Yeah, superb. And Jay.
Hey everybody, I'm Jay Fowdar. I am our VP of Client Strategy and Success at Samba TV. For those who don't know what Samba TV does, we have software that's embedded in smart TVs globally. Our technology fingerprints what's being seen on the screen so we can collect viewership data about what people are watching on the TV. Favorite TV show? I had Top Boy down as
stolen.
But I had a second in case someone said Top Boy. So I used to love Formula One, and when I had a daughter, I stopped watching it because I couldn't do Sundays. I had to go to birthday parties and stuff like that. So I binged the whole lot early this year before I went to Silverstone to watch the race. So Drive to Survive, and I think they announced yesterday new series coming out in February. So very excited about that.
The access they get on it, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a totally different side to watching the race.
Yeah, I love Full Swing. I thought that was amazing. So that kind of document is almost changing the nature of sport, and I've heard that's been really positive for actual viewing figures for Formula One on Sky and Channel 4. Is that as a result of that, you're seeing I think it's a really good thing for sport, isn't it? That kind of access. Anyway, so we're not here to talk about sport shows. We're here to talk about TV now. So Peter's obviously just talked about how important TV continues to be, and he sees it being, still maintaining its role in terms of effectiveness and delivering results for advertisers. Clearly, over the last 7 years, we have been through a huge amount of change. We've had the impact of the SVODs. We've had a chunk of viewing time that's moved out of commercially funded TV into environments where there isn't advertising, or into environments where the advertising is probably easier to avoid. So the biggest question that tends to be on most advertisers' minds is, how do I continue to drive that cost-effective reach? How do I continue to get my video ad in front of as many people as possible? Jackie, this must be one of the sort of questions that's constantly at the front of your mind. What's the solution? How do we continue to drive that high reach?
So it's an ongoing learning journey for everyone, and you're right, like the fragmentation has made both planners very excited and probably a little bit overwhelmed at the same time in equal measure. And I think the trick to it is getting really clear on what type of reach you need. Peter will have set up about attention just now. There's obviously a hot topic, but depending on what the task is and how you're going to answer a genuine challenge from a client, there are loads of different options now in terms of which reach levers to pull across linear to obviously all of the different platforms, including social. They all can play a role, and they all have a certain type of value. And the trick from a planning perspective is getting really clear and precise about what you're trying to shift, and therefore what type of reach solution is the right way to do that. So in terms of the first point is like, what type of reach? An example would be, if you're trying to drive reappraisal for a massive advertiser, you're going to need, as Peter will have brought you through, more watch time on that ad, right? That means only certain platforms and channels can do that. On the flip side, if you had like a sale, and it's like a 10-second asset and a quick fleeting message, you might be quite happy to stack that in a totally different way, with maybe more social and different things like that. They're two like polarized examples. I think as well as that, the question on how much is high reach needs to be addressed, because the exciting side of the whole new attention economy is it redefines what reach looks like. And so I think gone are the days where you're like 1+ cover at 95%. I think you need to be cleverer than that and understand with your clients what the impact of different levels of attention and attentive reach, which might have a more of a premium cost, but ultimately a better outcome on brand metrics and sales in the end. So playing around with that is one thing. And my final point would be on the SVOD argument, which is, we were talking in the green room, obviously, so next year more things are going to open up in that space. You need to have budget in your TV plans to test and learn around all of this stuff. It's absolutely essential. And you need to deeply understand not just your audiences from a growth perspective, but really their behavior, like deeply understand their behavior in all of content and media. Because what they might be viewing in peak may not be anything to do with a video ad. It might now be TikTok, could be gaming. And testing what that does to your plan from an incrementality perspective is going to be important too.
Superb. There's a load of stuff there to try and sort of unravel. I love the idea of defining what you mean by reach and planning against that and targeting yourself against that before you start, as opposed to maybe just going for a sort of vanity 1+ type measure that gives you a big number but doesn't necessarily give you the results that you're looking for.
Totally, and I think you have to be brave with clients, right, and show them different solutions for different types of campaigns and different types of tasks. You can't be lazy in media planning, and especially in video planning now. You have to be really clever, and you have to show difference between campaign types and ultimately like marketing objectives.
Jay, your business is kind of set up to help advertisers with this challenge. So you're sitting on a lot of data. You can see who's been exposed to the TV parts of their campaign. You can see who hasn't. Tell us about how you're helping businesses solve for this problem.
Yeah, and I think it's important to iterate that TV is still a fundamentally great mechanism or media channel to build reach. So that kind of initial big reach play that you have in TV still exists, and brands still desire the safe storytelling method of TV to do that. our data is built off the back of that. So if there wasn't great TV, we wouldn't have a great amount of data. And what our data allows us to do is to understand, as you said, what people have seen on TV. And our sort of rhetoric is actually brands want to have a coherent omni-channel approach. So you've got that reach from TV, fantastic. How do you complement that in other channels? And it kind of goes to your point, Jackie, is like, what does +1 mean in out of home? What does +1 mean in social or in BVOD? And so that's something we're helping advertisers understand, is where can they find that incremental reach across other platforms, across other channels. And we do that using geo. So we use location-based data. So one of the key things or the USPs that we bring to market is the ability to understand TV viewership at a very granular level. And we're able to do that at a postcode level. And what we discovered sort of this year is postcode is a ubiquitous identity key for other media channels. So you can start planning out of home, digital, video, BVOD, social, in all walled gardens using our data. So the thing we're focusing on this year and next year is helping advertisers find that incremental reach from the TV screen to other channels.
It does seem like the postcode is back, doesn't it? As one of the sort of the key data points, we sort of shifted away to, I suppose it's partly down to a cookieless future and the rest of it, but it seems we're finding different ways, and postcode seems to be quite a popular means of sort of identifying, who has been reached, who hasn't, and who you're trying to reach.
Correct, and I think part of the issue is you've got, this isn't a bash at Bob, a panel of 5,000 to 8,000 people. You can't measure reach at a very granular level. They do it at a TV region. Because we have scale, we can do it at a much more granular level to make it actionable. I think that's the key thing. But you're right, privacy is probably the driver, the main driver why geo's come back in. I think the walled garden nature of some of the platforms that brands want to get into is also pushing that route, because geo's a ubiquitous targeting variable. You can do that across YouTube, across out of home. Cinema can be planned in that way as well. So it is making a comeback. And I think the audiences make sense.
Yeah. So we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to sort of jump around onto sort of different areas, but there's been a lot of chat about the importance of brand advertising. Peter would have just been talking about the power of brand. One thing that TV generally doesn't get sort of considered as is on the performance side of things. I think it can be one of the sides of TV that gets massively overlooked by advertisers. It's not necessarily seen in the same light, possibly because it's not quite down the pointy end of the funnel as the likes of search or retail media options. But it still has this ability to drive mass demand. And I think in terms of the advanced functionality of TV, in terms of the way it's evolving, bringing together the best of the internet with the best of what TV has to offer. Does it mean that we're getting to a place where TV is actually much more potent as a performance channel than it used to be? Ben, tell us a bit about how you see the advanced nature of TV developing and the type of stuff that you do helping advertisers get the best out of TV from this point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this, just in the last few years, with the growth of the, alternative data sets that are much more granular and more advanced attribution, there's been a lot of great work. If I think back at my days at 605, where we were measuring attribution for clients like Walmart.
So 605, because this UK audience probably not that familiar, it says set-top box
exactly.
data.
It's one of the first companies to kind of aggregate census-level set-top box data to provide advanced measurement and specifically attribution. So it wasn't necessarily going after Nielsen as a currency, but more so to measure the impact of campaigns by matching, household level ad exposure data with sales data and brand data. And I think the important thing I learned is just the impact that TV has across the full funnel. So when we talk about performance, I think we have to be careful not to really focus solely on sales, just because the impact that television delivers is unprecedented on the upper part of that funnel. Things like brand awareness, brand favorability, brand response, and things like that. And I know that clients like Walmart and Uber were really intent on measuring that, and then the corollary effect of what impact does driving brand lift have on in-store online sales. And if you can correlate the two and see the effect of things like creative or messaging or offer, to see what ultimately is driving brand lift and or sales lift, they kind of bifurcated They were advertising, they had brand campaigns, and obviously these more promotional campaigns drive people in store. We were focused heavily on the brand campaigns. What was interesting was just to see the impact that those brand campaigns had in driving new audiences in store, because they might have, certain, perceptions about Walmart or Uber, both of which, we're going through a few years back. Uber obviously was going into certain markets, and there was pushback with the taxi and limousine commissions about whether Uber was good or bad. So being able to really shape people's perception of the brand had more impact on sales than even the promotional offers that they would have. So I think the bottom line is just, if we're going to define performance and television, really think of it as the full funnel impact and making sure we don't overlook the upper funnel benefits in lieu of all the sales that we're generating.
I think probably the most interesting aspect of this is that it's the fact that once you have the ability to measure the impact of TV, then suddenly it does become considered as a potent sort of performance channel or a multiplier on performance. I mean, Chris, this is your lifeblood, right? This is what you spend your time looking into. Tell us a bit about your setup at Version 02. How are you going about measuring the effectiveness of TV? What have you put in place to get that read?
Yeah, that's the bit you were talking about, trying to correlate brand metrics with the kind of lower funnel response. That's exactly what my team spend all day, every day, doing across our portfolio of brands. So yeah, I was kind of nodding away, going, yeah, that's very important, and going, oh, I'm going to have to explain that now. Yeah, I mean, we try and cover, not just for TV, this applies to every channel, so TV attribution, so minute level, spot matching, which I imagine a lot of people are familiar with in the room, your TV squares and that kind of thing is fairly well known. That's been around for ages, and I don't quite understand why it's, from a digital native performance marketing perspective, which is generally where this kind of world is going in my experience, tends to be ignored a bit there. I don't quite get that. So we've been trying really hard to revive that as a methodology, and we've actually in-housed that, and guys in my team are in the audience who built it, in fact. And that's great, and that's one way of saying, here's some immediate traffic that we've driven from the activity. I think it really is that kind of dichotomy between digital performance marketing, which you see immediate responses from, and you need the answer to that to be able to kind of be in the room with those conversations. I think the challenge when you move further up the funnel, especially for bigger advertisers, and this certainly isn't true for startups or probably scale-ups. I mean, anyone who's in the room who's been at a startup or seen when a startup has gone on telly for the first time, it is remarkable, the lift that you tend to see. And it's also completely undeniable. But when you're a mature brand and mature category, you've got sort of high-level awareness. Generally, people know, like Virgin Media, people will always probably look and see whether, unless they've had a terrible experience. People always kind of look and see if we're there. They know we exist, and that's built over years of equity. And so then the reason I'm going in that direction is when you're then trying to prove the value of it in the upper funnel or the mid funnel, or even the lower funnel actually, it starts to get trickier because you've just got this baseline that's been there for a long time. Conversely, if you've never done it before and you go out for the first time, it's like, bang, here it is.
It's easier for smaller, newer businesses to see the impact of the likes of TV advertising. It's harder for bigger business. But you also employ, you use Ubiquity to run your econometrics. Tell us about how you use that within the business alongside the more sort of granular attribution data, and how powerful is that as a tool to convince the business where to invest, and the financial teams who might be skeptical, and the performance teams who might be wanting just to spend on search. How do you use that data?
Yeah, so we use Ubiquity. We have a fairly comprehensive econometrics program across the portfolio, covering VM, O2, and GIFGAF. We also have a geo-testing program, so experimentation, so back to Jay's point around postcode. Although I would say that postcode level targeting in most channels is very, very poor and very expensive, so caution.
Okay.
There's
a push-pull against the additional cost of higher targeting versus the lower price point, but wastage that you get with more mass.
Yeah, exactly. It's an effectiveness and efficiency trade-off, right? And this is true on any channel in any type of media that you would go into. But typically when you want to do, and we do this quite a lot, particularly for Virgin Media, where we have an on-net footprint and we don't cover the whole of the UK, so there is some potential commercial benefit for us to target certain postcodes versus others. And overall, it's just too expensive to justify it at that level of granularity, would be my general guidance, with the exception of direct mail. I don't know if Ian Gibbs is in the room, he'll love that. But there is a balance. So if you go up a level or 2 levels, so maybe postcode area or something like that, then all of a sudden the economics of it starts to work out. But testing that is challenging, and you have to do that regularly, which is why over the last couple of years we've invested really heavily in our geo-testing program and been building that out in partnership with the guys at Ubiquity and our attribution models and our digital attribution models and everything, because they all have to, wanky marketing phrase, it's all triangulation and everything's got to come together to get that one view.
And how does it, you know, do the business accept the results? I mean, I've had conversations with advertisers where their financial teams don't believe the econometrics, and they don't. And I don't know whether it's they just don't believe in marketing or don't have the right relationship. You know, how does the business sort of view the data and its ability to persuade them to make, you know, investment decisions?
I definitely would say that resonates. Look, for us, it's all about credibility within the business. So marketers typically go, look how wonderful our campaign is, and will find all the KPIs that show how great it is, but might forget about the 1 or 2 that you've actually spent the time correlating with your commercial performance and telling the business that, you know, yeah, consideration is the thing, but we didn't drive that, but we did drive salience, and that's really important. Well, you're kind of changing the story, which in terms of marketing is exactly the wrong thing to be doing. We need consistency, and we need to build credibility within our organisation, and unfortunately that takes time, in the same way as when you're building a brand. That takes time, that takes years, frankly, of working collaboratively with your finance business partners. And
I suppose it comes back to what Jackie was saying before about the importance of defining what it is you're trying to do, define that up front. And I suppose if you're doing that with the financial teams, then when you come back, if you have done it, then everyone can get a pat on the back. And if you haven't, you can relook at things, I suppose.
It's just about engaging them in the right way, and not. I think marketers, at least in my experience, can be a bit insular in that way. We kind of use metrics that nobody else would look at, and we talk about things that nobody else really gets. Mm-hmm. So you need to get it to pounds and pennies. It's got to be about margin, or it's got to be about EBITDA, or whatever it is that you want to talk about. It has to. Yeah. Otherwise, you just no credibility in any space outside of these kind of rooms or your agencies or whatever. That's kind of my view.
No, I think that's great advice. Jackie, Kate Waters from ITV yesterday was on stage talking about all the work that they're putting into getting better at measuring outcomes. Mm-hmm. What would you like the broadcasters to prioritise? Where would you like to see them, you know, invest in terms of this type of measurement expertise? I
mean, they have done a phenomenal job in investment. All of the big broadcasters have done that. And I think it is continuing. Why they need to continue doing that is because at the flip side, we have clients who are investing increasingly in first-party data solutions. We've got like massive growth in clean rooms, and that we need like the big broadcasters to be able to activate all that stuff in a brilliant way. And Chris touched on smaller clients who might not have the amazing suite of armory in terms of measurement that he has. But so in that situation, I think an ITV or a Channel 4 or a Sky can offer a really solid measurement solution. You obviously need to make sure that you're also working with bigger clients within their own like Ubiquity models and own measurement frameworks too. So I think the continued support in terms of investing in the right areas and also in people power. So I was at Sky on Friday, and you know, to see them growing their planning support massively is exactly what we need, because everything gets complex in our industry, from measurement, which obviously it could be a whole other panel on TV measurement, probably is. You know, that whole world gets tricky, and you need people who can help the planning teams and agencies and the clients understand exactly what uplift looks like and how all of the channels come together.
So you basically welcome the broadcast invest in this kind of stuff. You want to work with them, with your clients, everyone together trying to get to the bottom.
I think we're all on a journey together, and we all need to have an equal footing in it. Yeah. So personally,
it's a change though, isn't it? Because I think probably the relationship, the legacy relationship that used to exist, broadcaster as the media owner, the media agency, and the client, you wouldn't really allow that same kind of access in the past. I think we're at a new point in time.
They have to obviously work harder, right? You touched on fragmentation at the beginning. like upfronts and things like that just used to be a show reel. Now it's all about their tech solutions and all about their, you know, with their GeoX and ITV or their uplift and measurement, and all of those solutions are as important now as the content that they're showing. It's the full package coming together.
Yeah. Right, we've only got 5 minutes left. It's gone so quickly, and we've got loads more we wanted to talk about. We're going to touch on retail media, which I think is one of the most interesting areas. Now, I find retail media like really confusing in terms of how it's defined and how it's talked about. Because on one sense, it's sponsored links in Amazon. So when you're in Amazon and you see something at the top and it says sponsored, that to me is retail media. Or even if you are in Tesco's and they've got some screens and they're advertising, that's retail media. But I think data that's owned by the likes of Tesco or Boots or Sainsbury's, that gets classed as being retail media. That's the bit that I'm interested in talking about, because we're seeing the broadcasters, as you mentioned, use data bunkers, use ways in which we can start to combine first-party data of who's watching ITV or Channel 4 or Sky. We can match it with retail data on who's buying what, and we can have quite intricate targeting solutions. Ben, tell us about what's the opportunity here? Is this a game changer for how you could use TV?
Well, I think it is. If you kind of separate the retail media side from like the underlying data, it's really one of the best and first use cases of census-based first-party data to use for targeting and closed-loop attribution. I don't think it's the only. I mean, I think there's going to be other data sets, but the fact is it's scaled so quickly because a lot of the retailers kind of made that data available through programmatic vendors, right? So that was kind of like the ad stack to support it. In the case of broadcasters, they've got to build their own ad stack to support massive data sets, and that's where kind of Operative comes in. And we have a new platform, AOS, that was designed from the ground up to support multi-currency, which really means moving from a system that can manage small amounts of ratings-based data, bits and bytes of data, to terabytes and gigabytes, but most importantly, create a low latency way for that data to be available through every step of the workflow, whether it's planning on the front end, activation, and then on the back end, measurement and attribution. And it's going to take some time for systems like that to get deployed on the broadcast side, but especially given the fact that they have massive amounts of first-party data, which is relatively new based on their streaming products. They're building out their kind of data management capabilities. It's really just being able to have a system to integrate that through the workflow, so it's no more difficult than a drop-down. And the first time I saw in their system a drop-down menu where you could pick your currency, I knew we were kind of moving in the right direction, and make it as simple as that. And it's really just a question of the buyer and the seller agreeing, what's the basis for the buy? What are we going to use to calculate CPMs? And then ultimately, what data set and what is the basis for measurement on the back end for attribution? So I think it's a really good example of how these larger first-party data sets, such as Samba TV, can be applied to augment the existing currency, just because ultimately in the States, Nielsen's still the dominant currency for television. I think regardless of the basis by which spots are bought and sold, other data sets can come into the mix to augment that for more advanced measurement to determine which spots to buy based on a lot of the attribution work that's happening.
So basically the data and the technology is getting there. It's just we need to figure out how to sort of properly use it and apply it.
You need a strategy for that.
Yeah.
You need it's not something you can just activate overnight. You need to understand what you're trying to do. And what's exciting about that is it moves the conversation to things like lifetime value for clients, and it makes sure you're always driving penetration with new audiences because you understand who your buyers are and how to match them.
Great point.
Chris, have you used this type of approach for Version 02, as a way of being able to sort of match data that you're sitting on with data the broadcast sitting on, or anyone else is sitting on, in order to tightly target a group?
Yeah, we kind of got 2 use cases for that. So I touched on our kind of network element on the fixed, on the broadband side. So we use that quite a lot for targeting, because we then exclude postcodes which we can't service, because that just pisses people off, frankly.
Yeah, okay.
And then on the other side, we obviously sit on our own set-top box data a lot, which is very valuable, and we're kind of trying to use that for the rest of the brands in our portfolio to go, okay, well, here is somebody who already has a contract with O2 and VM. Could we try and get them on giffgaff and O2? What kind of programming are they watching? It's all very high level. It's kind of privacy-centric, and we don't know who these individuals are, but it helps us get an idea of whether we can tweak our schedule to try and encourage more people with the right offer.
And have you seen that working? I mean, have you seen from the sort of the results that's a more effective way of spending your budget rather than just trying to target everybody?
The on-there stuff, definitely. I mean, we're just coming into the first set of results on that now, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wastage. So, like, reducing wastage is great, and when you've got linear TV where you can't do that, that allows you to still get that kind of wider awareness, to your point earlier, but also you can still be more targeted in BVOD, for example. The other piece is an ongoing development project that we're working on now, so TBC, whether that's going to actually
All right, we'll have to wait till next year to hear about that one. We're pretty much at Jay. What about Samba? Are you? We'll overrun by a second. But Jay, tell us about what you're doing in this area. Can you use Samba data in this way? Are you feeding it into, I don't know, like say InfoSum as a way of creating a facility for data?
Yeah, so I think getting those data from brands is notoriously tricky, and I think clean rooms have helped enable that or facilitate that data sharing in a privacy compliant way. So if you take privacy away, like I can talk about Australia. Australia's a bit more, there's no GDPR there. And to your example about retail media, Woolies X.
That's classic Australia.
Oh no, it's great. It's great to talk about a market where GDPR isn't restrictive. But Woolworths, the biggest retailer out there, like their Tesco equivalent, have their own ad division, their own ad tech division called Woolies X. And as part of Woolies X, they have a division called Cartography. And Cartography is their retail media business. And they have, I went into some of these stores and they've invested heavily in big screens throughout the stores and cameras in the stores looking at you, walking down the aisle. They say that they're not personally identifiable. It's, they can tell whether you're a male or a female and ages and things like that. But they're obtaining all this data to inform what goes on those screens. And so you'll walk down the aisle and you'll see the screen suddenly change to a bold ad. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. And so they're really, really kind of advanced there. I'd love to see probably a bit less creepy in that nature, but that sort of innovation happening in the UK, with brands moving into clean rooms and sharing that data. The big challenge is getting that data to inform what you're doing in targeting.
That is terrifying.
It is.
I don't want to see that.
You'd be breaking the law if you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit. What's that film with Tom Cruise? Minority Report, isn't it?
Yeah, Minority.
You're scanning eyes and getting served ads. Let's not go there.
They put signs up. They do say this camera is looking, but not collecting any video or anything. It's just creepy.
Right. Well, on that note, I think that's us. Thank you very much.